and welcome to my online theory classes. For this course, I'm going to be using a book called Conservatory Canada, Theory for Students, and it's a level 1 book. This book is appropriate for children depending on maturity, around 8 years old and upwards through adults as well. I'm going to be doing another course for younger beginners, which I'll be posting shortly. I highly recommend getting the book off of Amazon first before you start doing the theory with me, because I'll be following along per chapter and giving advice as we go along in the book. I'm also available if anyone wanted to forward me their music work, and I'm willing to mark it for you and give some advice and direction as well. So please feel free to message me. The first chapter we start is going to show us how we notate music. And we use something called a staff, a music staff. The staff that we used to have was written on 11 lines. And the middle line we've now taken away, and it's considered an invisible line. So we've divided those 11 lines up into 2 staffs. So you have 5 lines for each staff. And then we'll have this invisible line, so I'll just do a dotted line to show where that used to be. And then we have 5 more lines. And of course, when we draw a staff, we draw a bar line, we call, at the end of each staff line. And we're going to go through and show you how to draw a treble clef and how to draw a bass clef. And this invisible middle line that we use will draw one of the lines in when we need it and use that to notate, and that's called a ledger line. So we have 5 lines and 5 lines. The treble clef is usually referencing the right hand part if you're a pianist, and the bass clef part for the left hand if you're a pianist and reading music. Now, how do we draw treble and bass clef? I'm just going to erase our invisible line as well here. And the treble clef part is on page 3. And treble clef has 2 names. It's called treble clef, and it's also called the G clef. And the reason we call it a G clef is because we start drawing it on the G line. And this second line out of the 5 lines is the G line. And you draw your circle mark on the G, and then you bring it around, touching the very bottom line. You come up and you cross the 4th line, continue up above all the lines, straight through the center, and we curl it over. Of course, it's kind of hard to draw it up in that position, but when you draw it down on paper, you're not going to be it's going to be a little bit more smooth. So G clef or treble clef. Now the 5 lines below, we're going to find our bass clef symbol. Bass clef also has a second name. It's called the F clef. And the reason we call it the F clef is, you may have guessed, we start on the note that's F. And in the bass clef, F is located on the 4th line. This one is very simple to draw. You just come up to hit the top lines and you curve around. We also add like a colon or 2 dots on either side of that F line. So we have bass clef or F clef and treble clef, or reference it as a G clef. And on page 3 in this book, they're going to give you an opportunity to draw a number of treble clefs. And they outline how to draw them. This is a traditional way that I drew it. Some people start at the bottom and come all the way up, but because this has the dual name of G clef, it makes it easier to draw it starting at that reference point. So, and on the page 4, you'll have an opportunity to draw a lot of your bass clef symbols, or we call them F clefs. Now, another point that we'll cover in the first lesson is on page 5, and it's called a bar line. Now, music without the bar lines is kind of like a run-on sentence. You need some breaks, And in having those breaks, we can measure out and make more sense of the bars, of the rhythm and the feeling of the music, the flow. So bar lines are an essential part of writing music. And a bar line is simply a division right in the middle of the music staff. As we progress farther, you're going to learn when to use those bar lines. So this page is relatively easy as well. On page 5, you're simply going to practice drawing. It says draw 6 single bar lines across. And I would recommend, as I showed you at the very end of each line, we're going to add another bar line to end the line. At the end of music, at the end of a song or end of a section, this final line is actually going to be a double line. So instead of seeing a single line like that, you're going to see a double line, and that shows us that that's the end. Usually it is written, as you'll see in your sample, quite dark compared to the other bar lines that you'd find in the middle of your piece. So that was another easy page, or a bar line page. Now this next part is going to take a little bit of studying, a little bit of memorization, and if you do not already play an instrument, it's going to take a little bit to get used to where these note names are, because we're going to cover all the names of the notes. And usually in piano, when I'm teaching, we'll first learn a group of 5 notes, and then I'll introduce some special sentences that'll help you remember notes in treble and the bass clef. So I'm just going to erase this bar line for now and fill in what's missing here. Now, for the treble clef, I use 2 simple sentences, well, 1 word and a simple sentence. If I'm trying to know the letter for the notes in the treble clef on a space, so I'm just going to fill those in here. And notice when we draw a note, we're not aiming to do a circle. Notes look more like an egg that's laying sideways a little, so they're going to be more oval in shape instead of circular. So the notes on every one of these spaces in the treble clef spell the word face. So F, A, C, E. So that's our F, our A, our C, and our E. In the bass clef, we have another sentence for the spaces. So I'll put notes on each space. And the sentence for this is all cows eat grass. So if that is an all, the word all, it's going to be an A. That's C for cows, E, and G. And if you're already playing an instrument, you'll know that each of these particular letters corresponds to a note on the keyboard. So in the bass clef, all is down lower, cows eat grass. And in the treble clef, middle C on the piano is the dividing line. This is F, A, C, and E. So each of these notated notes have a specific place on the piano that you'll play them. And if you're playing another instrument as well with you, each of the notes is going to have a specific place on your instrument. So those are the 2 sentences for spaces. Let's have a look at our lines. And you may want to pause the video and just write down the sentences, because you're going to need a reference point as you're doing the following worksheets, because they're going to be asking you to write in the letter names underneath the notes. So again, we'll put my treble clef in, or my G clef, starting on the G. And as you practice those, you'll get faster and smoother with them. So there are 5 lines, so we will have five notes. And I'm just also going to erase this bass clef space one, and we will start the line sentences after this. So this sentence is every good boy, I'll just put it down here, deserves fun. I have one student that came and showed me another sentence, empty garbage before dad freaks. Some people say every good boy deserves fudge, and you can play along with these and make up something that you might remember better. But the key is to make sure we start each of whatever words you choose with those letters. So every, that's E, Good is G, B for boy, D for deserves, and F for fun. And again, they have their specific spot on the keyboard as well. You have your E, G, B, D, and F. So when you see that note, you know it's placed right there above middle C. Every good boy deserves fun. And then we'll draw our 5 lines again. And we'll put our bass clef, or also called F clef, in. We'll draw our notes on each line. And a common sentence to use is, good birds don't fly away. So again, starting with the first letter of every word, we have G, B, D, F, A. Good birds don't fly away. An alternative fun sentence can be, grizzly bears don't fight anymore. And again, yeah, if you think of something better, I'd actually love to hear it in the comments if you had any other ideas.